The red dust swirled across the barren surface of Kepler 442b as Commander Vexthul stepped out of his transport ship. His yellow eyes scanned the mining site with cold satisfaction. The crystal formations that jutted from the ground like frozen lightning were worth more than entire star systems. His reptilian features showed no emotion as he watched his soldiers tear the precious minerals from the planet's flesh. "Sir, we have a problem," reported Lieutenant Kralvex, his voice crackling through the communication device. "The deep scanners show life forms in the lower caverns. They appear to be using the crystal formations as nesting sites." Vexthul's forked tongue flicked out in annoyance. Indigenous life meant paperwork. It meant delays. It meant the Empire's bureaucrats asking questions about proper relocation procedures. He had no time for such nonsense. "What kind of life forms?" he demanded, his clawed hands gripping the railing of his observation platform. "Large winged creatures, sir. They appear to be some kind of dragon-like species. Our sensors detect at least 20 adults and an unknown number of young in the deepest caverns." The commander's eyes narrowed. Dragons meant fire. Fire meant danger to his mining equipment. More importantly, dragons meant the creatures could fight back. He had seen what happened on Zerion Prime when the mining crews encountered hostile natives. Half his fleet had been destroyed before they could establish control. "How many young?" Vexthul asked, already formulating his solution. "Difficult to determine, sir. The crystal formations interfere with our scanners, but thermal readings suggest at least a dozen small heat signatures." Vexthul walked to the tactical display and studied the cave system. The adult creatures had chosen their nesting site well. The caverns were deep and narrow, making it impossible for his heavy weapons to reach them. A ground assault would be costly and time-consuming. But there was another way. "Prepare the seismic charges," he ordered. "Target the upper cavern supports." Lieutenant Kralvex hesitated. "Sir, that will seal the creatures inside. Without access to the surface, they will die slowly." "Exactly," Vexthul replied without looking up from his display. "No paperwork required for creatures that no longer exist. The Empire will never know we encountered them." The seismic charges were placed with military precision. Vexthul watched from his ship as the explosions tore through the cavern ceiling. Tons of rock collapsed into the tunnels, sealing the dragon creatures in their underground tomb. The adult dragon's roars of rage and terror echoed briefly before being silenced by falling stone. But the cubs were deeper in the system, protected by their parents' careful planning. As the dust settled, 12 small dragon-like creatures huddled together in the darkness. Their iridescent scales, once bright with health, began to dull as fear and hunger took hold. The smallest among them, barely the size of a house cat, pressed against his siblings for warmth. The crystals that had once provided the energy they needed for growth now lay shattered around them. Without the mineral compounds from these formations, the cubs would not survive their first molting cycle. They would die slowly, their bodies unable to complete the transformation that would allow them to fly and hunt for themselves. Meanwhile, 3 star systems away, Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair aboard the exploration vessel Meridian. His ship was small compared to the massive military vessels of the major empires, but it was fast and well-equipped for deep space missions. Morrison had spent 15 years exploring the outer rim, mapping new worlds and searching for signs of intelligent life. The bridge was quiet except for the steady hum of the ship's engines. Morrison was reviewing survey reports when his communications officer, Kyle Bennett, looked up from his station with a puzzled expression. "Captain, I'm picking up a strange signal," Kyle reported. "It's very faint, but it appears to be some kind of distress beacon." Morrison straightened in his chair. "Source?" "The Kepler 442 system, sir. But that's in Zephyrian territory. Our star charts show it as a restricted mining zone." "Could be a trap," suggested Amy Chen, the ship's security officer. She was young but experienced, having served on several frontier vessels before joining Morrison's crew. The Zephyrians are known for using false distress signals to lure ships into ambush situations. Morrison considered this. The Zephyrian Empire was one of the most ruthless powers in this sector of space. They had no love for human explorers, viewing them as competitors for valuable resources. Any human ship caught in their territory would be destroyed without warning. But the signal nagged at him. In his years of exploration, Morrison had learned to trust his instincts. Something about this distress call felt different. It wasn't the usual pattern of a military trap. The signal was weak and irregular, more like a genuine emergency beacon running on failing power. "Lisa, what's your opinion?" Morrison asked, turning to his chief medical officer. Dr. Lisa Harper looked up from her medical reports. She was a skilled doctor who had volunteered for deep space service to help establish first contact protocols with new species. Her gentle manner and quick thinking had saved lives on more than one occasion. "If there's a chance someone needs help, we should investigate," she said simply. "That's why we're out here, isn't it? To explore and assist where we can?" Tony Rodriguez, the ship's engineer, shook his head. "Captain, with respect, we're outnumbered 100 to 1 in that sector. If the Zephyrians catch us, we won't be helping anyone." Morrison stood and walked to the main display screen. The Kepler 442 system appeared as a small red dot surrounded by warning markers indicating hostile territory. The smart choice would be to report the signal to Earth Command and let them decide what to do. But Earth was months away, and if someone was truly in distress, they would be dead long before help could arrive. "Kyle, can you determine the exact source of that signal?" Morrison asked. "Working on it, sir," Kyle replied, his fingers flying over his console. "The signal is definitely coming from the third planet in the system. It's very weak, but I'm detecting what might be multiple sources in the same general area." Multiple sources meant multiple survivors. Morrison's decision was made. "Set course for Kepler 442b, he ordered. "We'll use the ion storm in the Cygnus Nebula as cover. If we time it right, we can slip past their patrol routes undetected." Amy Chen looked concerned. "Sir, if we're wrong about this, then we'll deal with the consequences," Morrison replied. "But I won't abandon people who might need our help. That's not who we are." As the Meridian changed course toward the Kepler 442 system, none of the crew could have imagined what they would find waiting for them in the dark caverns below the planet's surface. The dragon cubs continued their lonely vigil, their small bodies growing weaker with each passing hour, unaware that help was finally coming from the most unlikely source imaginable. The Meridian shuddered as it entered Kepler 442b's atmosphere. Captain Morrison gripped his command chair as the ship fought against the turbulent winds of the ion storm. Lightning crackled around the hull, but the electrical interference would hide them from Zephyrian sensors. "Landing zone located," announced Tony Rodriguez from his engineering station. "I'm reading a flat area about 2 kilometers from the signal source. But Captain, the surface readings are not good. This place has been strip-mined to hell." Through the main view screen, the crew could see the devastation below. What had once been a living world was now a scarred wasteland. Massive mining equipment lay abandoned across the landscape like the bones of dead giants. Deep craters marked where the Zephyrians had torn valuable minerals from the ground. "Jesus," whispered Kyle Bennett. "They really did a number on this place." Morrison's jaw tightened. He had seen Zephyrian mining operations before, but the complete destruction never failed to anger him. These aliens showed no respect for the worlds they conquered, taking everything of value and leaving behind only death. "Take us down, Tony," Morrison ordered. "Lisa, Amy, Kyle, suit up. We're going in." The landing was rough. The ship's sensors showed the ground was unstable from all the mining activity. As the crew prepared for their mission, Dr. Lisa Harper checked her medical equipment one final time. Something told her she would need every tool at her disposal. "Atmosphere is breathable, but toxic," Amy Chen reported as she checked her weapon systems. "High levels of mining dust and chemical residue. We'll need full environmental suits." The 4 crew members stepped out onto the dead world. Their boots crunched on ground that looked like broken glass mixed with metal shavings. In the distance, they could see the massive holes where the Zephyrians had extracted their precious crystals. "Signal is coming from over there," Kyle said, pointing toward a cluster of rocky hills, about half a kilometer north. "But guys, I'm reading some weird energy patterns. This doesn't feel like a normal distress call." They walked carefully across the unstable terrain. Amy kept her rifle ready, scanning for any signs of danger. The silence was complete, except for the wind whistling through the abandoned mining equipment. As they approached the source of the signal, Lisa noticed something strange. "The readings are coming from underground," she observed. "Deep underground." They found the entrance to the cave system hidden behind a pile of rubble. It looked like there had been an explosion, sealing most of the opening. Only a small gap remained, barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through. "This was done on purpose," Amy said, examining the blast pattern. "Someone used military-grade explosives to seal this cave." Kyle ran his scanner over the area. "I'm detecting multiple life signs down there. Very faint, but definitely alive. They're about 50 meters down." Morrison made the decision quickly. "Lisa, you're the smallest. You go first. Amy, you follow her for security. Kyle and I will stay up here and monitor communications." Lisa squeezed through the narrow opening and began her descent into the darkness. Her helmet light cut through the blackness, revealing a tunnel that had been carved by natural forces over millions of years. The walls sparkled with traces of the same crystals the Zephyrians had been mining. "I'm seeing evidence of a collapse," she reported through her radio. "Recent, too. This whole area was deliberately brought down." As she went deeper, the tunnel opened into a large cavern. Lisa's breath caught in her throat as her light revealed what was waiting for her in the darkness. 12 small creatures huddled together against the far wall of the cave. They looked like tiny dragons, each about the size of a house cat. Their scales, which should have been bright and colorful, were dull and gray. Several of them were barely moving. "My God," Lisa whispered. "Kyle, Amy, you need to see this." Amy squeezed through the tunnel and joined Lisa in the cavern. Her tough exterior cracked when she saw the small creatures. "Are they babies?" "I think so," Lisa replied, slowly approaching the group. "They look sick, malnourished." The dragon cubs noticed the humans and tried to back away, but they were too weak to move far. The smallest one collapsed and lay on its side, breathing rapidly. Lisa could see its tiny ribs showing through its dulled scales. "Easy," Lisa said, softly, removing her gloves and extending her hand. "We're here to help." The cubs made small chirping sounds like birds in distress. One of the larger ones, about the size of a small dog, stepped protectively in front of the others. Its eyes glowed faintly in the darkness, showing intelligence and fear. Lisa reached into her medical kit and pulled out a nutrition bar. She broke it into small pieces and placed them on the ground between herself and the creatures. "I know you're hungry," she said. "This might help." The protective cub sniffed the air, then cautiously approached the food. It took a small bite, then quickly grabbed the piece and retreated to share it with the others. Within minutes, all 12 cubs were eating eagerly. "They're starving," Lisa reported to Morrison. "But they're intelligent. Look how they share the food equally among themselves." Amy watched in amazement as the cubs organized themselves. The stronger ones made sure the weaker ones got their fair share. The smallest cub, which had collapsed earlier, was gently fed by its siblings. "Captain," Kyle's voice crackled through the radio. "I'm picking up something important down here. These crystal formations aren't just decorative. They're giving off a specific type of energy. I think these creatures need this energy to survive." Lisa looked around the cavern and saw that most of the crystal formations had been shattered by the cave-in. Only a few small pieces remained intact and they were losing their glow. "That's why they're dying," she realized. "They need these crystals, and the Zephyrians destroyed them." Tony's voice joined the conversation from the ship. "I've been analyzing the mineral composition. These crystals contain a unique compound that I've never seen before. But here's the thing. I think I can synthesize it using our ship's equipment." "How long would that take?" Morrison asked. "At least 12 hours, maybe more, and I'd need samples of the original crystals to get the formula right." Lisa looked at the dying cubs and made a quick decision. She carefully picked up the smallest one, which was barely breathing. The tiny creature didn't resist, too weak to fight. "I'm bringing them up to the ship," she announced. "They won't survive another night down here." "Lisa, wait," Amy cautioned. "We don't know if they're dangerous. Those claws and teeth might be small now, but..." Look at them, Amy, Lisa replied, cradling the tiny cub against her chest. They're babies. They're dying. If we were trapped and starving, wouldn't you want someone to help us? The other cubs watched as Lisa gently carried their sibling toward the tunnel entrance. After a moment of hesitation, the protective cub chirped softly and began following her. One by one, the others joined the procession. Well, I'll be damned, Amy muttered. They trust her. Getting 12 weak dragon cubs through the narrow tunnel was challenging, but the creatures seemed to understand they were being rescued. They helped each other, with the stronger ones supporting the weaker ones. When they finally reached the surface, Morrison stared in disbelief at the small procession emerging from the cave. The cubs blinked in the daylight, their scales beginning to show hints of their natural colors now that they were away from the darkness. Captain, Lisa said, still holding the smallest cub, meet the survivors, and we need to get them to the ship immediately. They're dying. Morrison looked at the 12 small faces looking up at him with a mixture of hope and fear. These weren't monsters or threats. They were children who had lost everything and were facing death alone in the darkness. Everyone back to the ship, he ordered. Tony, fire up that synthesizer. We have some lives to save. As the crew carefully transported the cubs back to the Meridian, none of them noticed the small probe that detached itself from a piece of abandoned mining equipment and began transmitting their location to the Zephyrian fleet. Commander Vexthul would soon learn that his problem had returned, and this time it came with human complications. The Meridian's medical bay had never been used for anything like this. Dr. Lisa Harper worked quickly to set up makeshift beds for the 12 dragon cubs. The smallest one, which she had started calling Phoenix, lay on the main examination table, breathing slowly. His tiny chest rose and fell with obvious effort. How are they doing? Captain Morrison asked as he entered the medical bay. Not good, Lisa replied, checking the readings on her scanner. Their body temperature is dropping and their metabolism is shutting down. Without those crystals, they're going into some kind of hibernation state. But they're too young and weak to survive it. Tony Rodriguez burst through the door, his face covered in sweat and engine grease. I've got good news and bad news. The good news is I think I can synthesize the crystal compound. The bad news is our ship's power core isn't strong enough to do it. What do you need? Morrison asked. More power than we have, Tony said, wiping his hands on a rag. A lot more. The synthesis process requires massive amounts of energy focused in a very specific pattern. We'd need to drain every system on the ship, including life support. Amy Chen looked up from where she was gently stroking one of the larger cubs. The creature had curled up next to her and was making soft purring sounds. There has to be another way. Kyle Bennett entered the medical bay carrying his analysis equipment. Actually, there might be. I've been studying these cubs more closely and I've discovered something amazing. They're not just intelligent, they're telepathic. What do you mean? Lisa asked, looking up from Phoenix. I mean, they can communicate without making sounds. Watch this. Kyle approached one of the cubs and thought about water. Immediately, several of the cubs began making drinking motions with their mouths. Lisa stared in amazement. That's impossible. Not impossible, just beyond our current understanding, Kyle continued. But here's the really interesting part. I think their telepathy works through the same energy patterns as those crystals. They might be able to help us with the synthesis process. Morrison frowned. You're suggesting we use these sick cubs as living batteries? Not batteries, Kyle corrected. Partners. If they can channel their natural telepathic energy and combine it with our technology, we might be able to create the crystals they need. Phoenix suddenly opened his eyes and looked directly at Lisa. She felt a strange tingling in her mind, like someone was gently knocking on a door inside her head. Did anyone else feel that? She asked. Feel what? Amy replied. Lisa looked down at Phoenix, who was still staring at her with large, intelligent eyes. The feeling came again, stronger this time. Images flashed through her mind, not her own, memories but someone else's. She saw vast caverns filled with crystal formations that pulsed with natural light, adult dragons, Magnificent creatures with scales that shimmered like jewels, tended to their young with gentle care. She saw a peaceful civilization that had existed for thousands of years, living in harmony with their world. Then, the images turned dark. She saw Zephyrian ships landing on the planet's surface. She witnessed the mining equipment tearing apart the crystal forests. She felt the terror of the adult dragons as they realized their world was being destroyed. "Oh God," Lisa whispered, tears forming in her eyes. "I can see their memories. Phoenix is showing me what happened." The other cubs began to gather around Lisa, their eyes glowing softly. More images flooded her mind. She saw the adult dragons making a desperate plan to save their young. They carried the cubs deep into the safest caverns and used their own bodies to shield them from the explosions. "They sacrificed themselves," Lisa said, her voice breaking. "The adults knew they were going to die, but they used their last moments to protect the children." Phoenix struggled to lift his head and touched Lisa's hand with his tiny snout. The contact sent a shock through her entire body. Suddenly she could feel his pain, his fear, his desperate need for the crystal energy that would let him grow strong. But she could also feel something else. Hope. Phoenix sensed that Lisa wanted to help, and through her he could sense the same desire in the other humans. "Lisa, your vital signs are spiking," Tony warned, checking his medical scanner. "Whatever's happening, it's affecting your nervous system." "It's okay," Lisa said, though she felt like electricity was running through her veins. "We're connecting somehow. Phoenix, can you understand me?" The tiny cub made a soft, chirping sound and pressed closer to her hand. Through their strange connection, Lisa felt his answer, not in words, but in pure emotion. Yes, he could understand her. "This is incredible," Kyle breathed. "Lisa, I think you're forming a telepathic bond with him. The energy readings I'm getting from both of you are off the charts." Morrison watched with concern as Lisa's eyes began to glow with the same soft light as the cubs. "Is this safe?" "I don't know," Tony admitted. "But look at Phoenix, his vital signs are improving." It was true. The smallest cub was breathing easier and his scales were beginning to show faint traces of color. The connection with Lisa seemed to be giving him strength. "I think I understand now," Lisa said, her voice sounding distant. "They don't just need the crystal energy, they need to be part of it. The crystals aren't just food or fuel. They're like a network that connects all the dragons together." Through Phoenix, Lisa could sense the other cubs. Each one had its own personality, its own fears and hopes. She felt their grief for their lost parents and their confusion about what was happening to them. But she also felt their growing trust in the humans who had rescued them. Despite everything they had suffered, these young creatures were willing to believe that help had finally come. "Tony," Lisa said, still maintaining contact with Phoenix, "what if we don't try to synthesize the crystals artificially? What if we help them create the crystals naturally?" "I don't understand." "Phoenix is showing me how it works. The adult dragons didn't just eat the crystals, they helped grow them. Their telepathic energy combined with the planet's natural minerals to create the formations they needed." Tony's eyes widened with understanding. "You're talking about biological crystal growth, using their natural abilities enhanced by our technology." "Exactly. But it would require a permanent connection between a human and a dragon. Someone would have to bond with them completely." Morrison stepped forward. "That someone would be you, wouldn't it?" Lisa looked down at Phoenix, who was now purring softly in her arms. "He's already chosen me, I can feel it. But Captain, this isn't just about saving their lives. Through their memories, I can see that there are other dragons still alive out there." "What do you mean?" "The Zephyrians didn't kill all the adults. They captured some of them. Phoenix's parents, they're still alive, being held in some kind of prison, used for entertainment in gladiatorial fights." Amy's face hardened with anger. "Those bastards are making them fight for sport." "It's worse than that," Lisa continued, the images from Phoenix's mind becoming clearer. "They're forcing the dragons to fight each other, breaking their telepathic bonds, destroying their family connections. It's torture of the worst kind." Phoenix, suddenly tensed in Lisa's arms. All 12 cubs raised their heads at the same time, their eyes glowing brighter. "What's wrong?" Morrison asked. Kyle checked his sensors and his face went pale. "Captain, we have company. 3 Zephyrian ships just dropped out of hyperspace. They're heading straight for us." "How did they find us?" Amy demanded, reaching for her weapon. "That probe we missed," Tony realized. "It must have transmitted our location before we could detect it." Morrison ran to the bridge, shouting orders. "Everyone to battle stations. Tony, how long do you need for the bonding process?" "At least an hour, maybe 2, Tony replied. "And? That's if everything goes perfectly. We don't have that kind of time," Morrison said grimly. Lisa felt Phoenix's fear spike through their connection. The cub had sensed the approaching danger, and through him she could feel the terror of all 12 cubs. They had survived the destruction of their world and the death of their parents, only to face the same enemies who had caused all their suffering. "No," Lisa said firmly, standing up with Phoenix still in her arms. "We're not running, we're not abandoning them. If those Zephyrian ships want to fight, they're going to get one they never expected." Through her bond with Phoenix, she felt something new, a power that had been sleeping in the cubs, waiting for the right moment to awaken. The crystal formations in the planet below weren't completely destroyed. Some still functioned deep in the planet's core, and through their telepathic connection, the cubs could still access that power. "Tony, start the bonding process now," Lisa ordered. "I don't care about the risks. These cubs are about to show the Zephyrians what happens when you mess with the dragon's family." As the enemy ships approached, Phoenix's eyes blazed with an inner fire that spoke of ancient power and terrible vengeance. The bond between human and dragon was about to be tested in the crucible of battle. Commander Vexthul stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Iron Fang, watching the human ship on his main screen. His yellow eyes burned with rage as he studied the small exploration vessel sitting on his mining world like an insect on rotting meat. "Scan the ship," he ordered his tactical officer. "I want to know exactly what these humans are doing in my territory." "Sir, we're detecting multiple life signs aboard their vessel. Some appear to be human, but others are different." Vexthul's forked tongue flicked out in interest. "Different how?" "The energy signatures match those of the indigenous creatures we eliminated from the planet, sir. It appears the humans have collected specimens." A cold smile spread across the commander's reptilian features. He had thought the dragon problem was solved when he sealed the caves. Now these interfering humans had undone his work. But perhaps this was an opportunity rather than a setback. "Open a communication channel," he commanded. On the Meridian, Captain Morrison received the incoming transmission with grim resignation. The reptilian face that appeared on his screen radiated malice and cruelty. "Human vessel, you are in violation of Zephyrian territorial space," Vexthul announced. "Surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded." "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth vessel Meridian," Morrison replied calmly. "We responded to a distress signal and are providing humanitarian aid to survivors." Vexthul's laugh was like the sound of breaking glass. "Humanitarian aid? Those creatures belong to the Zephyrian Empire. They are property, nothing more. Return them immediately or be destroyed." "I don't think so," Morrison said, cutting the transmission. In the medical bay, Lisa felt Phoenix tremble in her arms as the bonding process began. Tony had connected a complex array of wires and sensors to both Lisa and the small dragon cub. Energy flowed between them, creating a bridge between human technology and dragon telepathy. "Lisa, your brain activity is going crazy," Tony warned, watching the monitors. "Are you sure about this?" "It's working," Lisa gasped, feeling Phoenix's consciousness merge with hers. Through their connection, she could sense the other cubs beginning to change. Their bodies were absorbing energy from the bond, growing stronger by the minute. Suddenly, Phoenix's eyes snapped open and blazed with silver light. The other cubs raised their heads, their own eyes glowing. Throughout the ship, the lights flickered as an unknown energy source interfaced with the Meridian's power systems. "What the hell is happening?" Amy demanded from the bridge. Kyle checked his sensors and stared in amazement. "The cubs are connecting to the planet's core somehow. I'm reading massive energy buildups from deep underground." On the planet's surface, ancient crystal formations that had laid dormant for millions of years began to pulse with life. The Zephyrian mining operation had only scratched the surface of Kepler 442b's true power. Deep in the planet's core, a network of living crystals stretched like veins through the rock, waiting for the right genetic key to activate them. That key was the telepathic bond between the dragon cubs and their chosen human partner. Phoenix stood up on the examination table, no longer the weak, dying creature they had rescued. His scales shimmered with silver and gold, and when he spread his tiny wings, they crackled with energy. The other cubs were transforming as well, growing from house cat size to the size of small dogs in a matter of minutes. "My God," Lisa whispered, feeling their shared power flowing through her mind. "They're not just healing, they're evolving." Through her bond with Phoenix, Lisa could access the collective memory of the dragon species. She saw their ancient civilization, their mastery of crystal technology, and their peaceful coexistence with their world. But she also saw their hidden defenses, systems built into the planet itself that had never been used because the dragons had never faced a threat like the Zephyrians. "Tony, Kyle, everyone listen to me," Lisa said, her voice carrying new authority. "This planet isn't defenseless. The dragons built protection systems into the very rock and crystal formations. We can activate them." "How?" Morrison asked over the intercom. "By working together. Human technology combined with dragon telepathy. But we need to move fast. Those Zephyrian ships are powering up their weapons." On the Iron Fang, Commander Vexthol watched with growing alarm as energy readings from the planet's surface spiked beyond his instrument's ability to measure. "Sir, massive power buildup detected planetside," his science officer reported. "The source appears to be the old crystal formations we thought were destroyed." "Impossible. We collapsed every major formation on the planet." "Not the deep ones, sir. There are networks extending to the planetary core that our surveys never detected." Vexithol snarled in frustration. "Target the human ship. Destroy it now before they can complete whatever they're doing." The 3 Zephyrian ships opened fire, sending streams of plasma toward the meridian. But as the deadly energy beams approached their target, pillars of crystal burst from the ground around the human ship. The attacks struck the crystalline barriers and were absorbed, their energy feeding back into the planet's defensive network. "Impossible," Vexthol breathed. In the Meridian's medical bay, Phoenix and his siblings were now the size of ponies, their scales gleaming like polished metal. Their telepathic abilities had expanded beyond anything Lisa had imagined possible. Through their bond, she could feel their connection to every crystal formation on the planet. "Lisa, we're getting readings from all over the planet," Kyle reported, excitedly. "Crystal formations are rising from the ground everywhere. It's like the whole world is waking up." Amy watched through the view screen as massive crystal spires erupted from the scarred landscape. The ugly mining scars were being covered by beautiful formations that pulsed with inner light. It was as if the planet was healing itself. "The Zephyrians are firing again," Morrison announced. This time the enemy weapons were met by beams of pure energy from the crystal spires. The Zephyrian shields flared and failed under the assault. One of the smaller ships lost power and began falling toward the planet's surface. "How is this possible?" Vexthol demanded. His science officer's voice shook with fear. "Sir, the entire planet has become a weapon. Every crystal formation is connected to a central network. The power levels are beyond anything in our database." Phoenix stood on his hind legs and placed his front paws on Lisa's shoulders. Through their bond, she felt his question as clearly as spoken words. He wanted to know if she was ready for the final phase of their connection. "What final phase?" she asked aloud. Images flooded her mind. She saw herself and Phoenix becoming something new, neither fully human nor fully dragon, but a bridge between both species. The transformation would give them the power to defend not just this planet, but to challenge the Zephyrian Empire's cruelty throughout the galaxy. But it would also mean she could never go back to being purely human. "Lisa, whatever you're thinking, decide fast," Morrison called. "Those Zephyrian ships are regrouping for another attack." Lisa looked into Phoenix's glowing eyes and saw not just intelligence, but wisdom beyond his apparent age. Through him, she could feel the pain of every creature the Zephyrians had enslaved or killed. She could sense the adult dragons still imprisoned in their gladiatorial arenas, waiting for rescue that might never come. "I'm ready," she said. The bonding process, completed in a blaze of silver light that filled the entire ship. When it faded, Lisa stood transformed. Her eyes glowed with the same inner fire as Phoenix, and energy crackled between her fingers. She was still human in appearance, but she was also something more. Phoenix and his siblings had grown to their full juvenile size, their wings now large enough to carry them in flight. But more importantly, their telepathic network now included Lisa as a permanent member. "The planet's defenses are fully online," Kyle reported in amazement. "We've got weapons that make Zephyrian technology look like toys." Commander Vexthul watched in horror as more crystal spires rose from the planet's surface. Each one was capable of destroying his most powerful warship. He had come here expecting to crush a small human exploration crew. Instead, he had awakened a sleeping giant. "All ships retreat to minimum safe distance," he ordered, but Phoenix had other plans. Through his bond with Lisa, he shared his deepest desire, not just to survive, but to rescue his parents and all the other dragons being held captive by the Zephyrian Empire. "No more running," Lisa said, her voice carrying the authority of the ancient dragon civilization. "No more hiding. It's time to show the galaxy that some things are worth fighting for." The crystal spires turned their attention to the fleeing Zephyrian ships, and the real battle was about to begin. Commander Vexthul's retreat lasted only minutes before his pride overruled his caution. He had built his reputation on crushing resistance, and he would not let a group of humans and their pet dragons destroy his career. "Bring us about," he snarled to his helmsman. "Deploy the dreadnought." The Iron Fang's cargo bay opened, revealing Vexthul's secret weapon. The dreadnought was a massive war machine, 50 feet tall and bristling with weapons. Its thick armor had been designed to crush planetary rebellions, and its pilot seat was perfectly sized for a Zephyrian commander. "Sir, are you certain this is wise?" his tactical officer asked nervously. "The power readings from the planet's surface are still climbing. Those crystals may be powerful, but they are still just rocks," Vexthul replied, climbing into the dreadnought's control chamber. "This machine has crushed cities. It will handle whatever primitive defenses these creatures have managed to activate." On Aditao, the Meridian, Lisa felt the massive war machine approaching through her bond with Phoenix. The young dragon's eyes blazed with anger as he recognized the energy signature of Zephyrian military technology. "He's coming down to finish this personally," Lisa announced to the crew. Through Phoenix's memories, she could see what the dreadnought was capable of. It had been used to destroy dragon settlements during the original invasion. Phoenix and his 11 siblings gathered around Lisa, their scales shimmering with barely contained energy. They were no longer the weak, dying cubs the humans had rescued. Each one was now the size of a horse with wings that could carry them at incredible speeds. "Lisa, the other ships are pulling back to a safe distance," Kyle reported. "But that big machine is landing about 2 kilometers from our position." Captain Morrison joined them in the medical bay, which had been transformed into something resembling a dragon nursery. "What's our play here? That thing looks like it could take on our entire ship." Lisa placed her hand on Phoenix's neck, feeling his determination through their bond. "The cubs want to fight. Their parents' memories show them exactly how to use their abilities in battle." "They're still young," Amy protested. "This is their first real fight." "No," Lisa corrected, her eyes glowing with Phoenix's shared memories. "This is their chance for justice. They've been carrying the pain of their parents' capture for weeks. They know their families are still alive, still suffering in Zephyrian gladiatorial arenas." Through the view screen, they watched as the dreadnought landed with a thunderous crash. The massive machine stood up on its 2 legs, its weapon systems powering up with ominous red lights. Vexthul's voice echoed across the landscape through the machine's speakers. "Humans, you have interfered with Zephyrian property for the last time. Surrender the creatures you have stolen, and I may allow you to die quickly." Phoenix raised his head and let out a roar that shook the Meridian's hull. It was no longer the chirp of a frightened cub, but the battle cry of a dragon warrior. His 11 siblings joined in, their combined voices creating a sound that carried across the planet. The crystal spires responded to their call, pulsing brighter as they channeled energy from the planet's core. Lisa felt the power flowing through the telepathic network, connecting every formation across the world into a single defensive system. "Time to go," Lisa said, walking toward the ship's exit ramp. "Whoa, wait," Morrison called. "You're not going out there to face that thing alone." "She won't be alone," Amy said, checking her rifle and following Lisa. "If those cubs are brave enough to fight for their families, then we're brave enough to fight beside them." Kyle and Tony grabbed their equipment and joined the group. "The captain's right," Kyle said. "We started this together. We finish it together." Morrison smiled grimly and picked up his sidearm. "Then let's go show this Zephyrian bastard what happens when you mess with Earth's children." The crew and the 12 dragon cubs stepped out onto the scarred landscape. The dreadnought loomed before them like a mechanical mountain, its weapons tracking their movement. "How touching," Vexthal's voice boomed from the war machine. "The pets have come to play with their masters." Phoenix stepped forward, his wings spread wide. Through their bond, Lisa felt his response, not in words but in pure emotion. The young dragon was no longer afraid. He was furious. The battle began when Vexthul opened fire with the dreadnought's main cannon. A beam of superheated plasma streaked toward the small group, but Phoenix was ready. He leaped into the air, his wings carrying him faster than the eye could follow. The plasma beam struck the ground where he had been standing, leaving a smoking crater. The other cubs scattered in all directions, their telepathic coordination allowing them to move as one mind in 12 bodies. Amy and Kyle found cover behind a crystal formation while Tony began setting up his equipment. "What are you doing?" Morrison shouted over the sound of weapons fire. "If Lisa and Phoenix can interface with the planet's systems, maybe I can boost their connection," Tony replied, connecting cables between his portable computer and the nearest crystal spire. Lisa felt the enhancement immediately. Through Phoenix, she could now access not just the planet's defenses, but its entire geological structure. The mining scars the Zephyrians had left were like open wounds, but the crystal network was already working to heal them. "Phoenix, can you get close enough to that machine?" she asked. The young dragon roared his answer and dove toward the dreadnought. Vexthul tracked him with smaller weapons, but Phoenix's siblings created a distraction. They flew in complex patterns around the war machine, their scales reflecting its weapon beams back at its sensors. While the commander was distracted, Phoenix landed on the dreadnought's back and began tearing at its armor with claws that now glowed with crystal energy. Each strike sent sparks flying and created weak points in the machine's defenses. "Impossible!" Vexthul snarled, trying to shake Phoenix off. "These creatures were weak. They were dying." "They were children who lost their parents," Lisa replied, her voice carrying across the battlefield through the crystal network. "And now they're old enough to fight back." Amy emerged from cover and began firing at the dreadnought's joints with her rifle. Her shots were precise, targeting weak points that Phoenix's attacks had created. Kyle joined her, using his technical knowledge to identify critical systems. But the real surprise came when the planet itself joined the fight. At Lisa's mental command, crystal spires erupted from the ground around the dreadnought. They didn't attack the machine directly. Instead, they formed a cage around it, trapping Vexthul inside. "You cannot hold me," the commander raged, firing his weapons at the crystal barriers. But the formations absorbed his attacks and fed the energy back into the planetary network. Phoenix landed on the ground in front of the trapped war machine. His eyes met Vexthul's through the dreadnought's view screen, and for the first time, the Zephyrian commander felt real fear. Through their bond, Lisa felt Phoenix's final decision. The young dragon wasn't interested in killing Vexthul. That would make them no better than their enemies. Instead, he wanted to show the galaxy the truth about what the Zephyrians had done. "Kyle, are you recording this?" Lisa asked. "Every second," Kyle confirmed. "And I'm broadcasting it on all frequencies. The whole galaxy is watching." Phoenix began to sing, not with his voice, but with his mind. Through the telepathic network, he shared his memories with everyone listening. The peaceful dragon civilization, The unprovoked attack, the murder of innocent families, the enslavement of survivors for entertainment. Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched in horror as the truth about the Zephyrian Empire was revealed. Other enslaved species saw the dragon's courage and began planning their own rebellions. Captain Morrison made the ultimate decision when he saw Vexthul preparing to activate the Dreadnought's self-destruct system. The commander would rather destroy himself in the evidence than face the consequences of his crimes. "I won't let him escape justice," Morrison declared, running toward the war machine. But Lisa and Phoenix were faster. Working together, they used the crystal network to teleport Morrison to safety just as the Dreadnought exploded. The blast was contained by the crystal cage, preventing any damage to the surrounding area. When the smoke cleared, Vexthul was gone, but his final transmission was being broadcast across the galaxy. In his rage, he had confessed to his crimes and revealed the locations of other Zephyrian prison worlds. The remaining Zephyrian ships in orbit received a simple message from their homeworld: return immediately for tribunal hearings. The Empire's own people had seen the broadcast and were demanding justice. Phoenix and his siblings gathered around Lisa, no longer cubs but young adults ready to rebuild their world. Through their bond, she felt their gratitude and their determination to create a better future. "What happens now?" Amy asked, looking at the transformed landscape around them. "Now we go home," Morrison said. "But not alone." Lisa smiled, feeling Phoenix's agreement through their bond. "Some of us are staying here to help rebuild. Others are going to Earth to establish formal relations between our species." Phoenix spread his wings and took flight, circling overhead with his siblings. Their joyful cries echoed across the healing planet as crystal formations continued to rise from the ground, erasing the scars of Zephyrian cruelty. The dragon cubs had found their savior in the most unlikely place, the compassionate hearts of humans who refuse here.